but this is the largest tax bill in NBA history.
History.
How do you not know that a player wants to go in a sign and trade to a specific spot?
The NBA free agency, it begins tomorrow, and Gordon Hayward will be available.
It's going to be the 4th of July tomorrow because it's going to be fireworks.
Welcome to the Jump Free Agency Special, presented by Kia.
Welcome to the Jump indeed. I am Rachel Nichols. I am alongside a pair of future Hall of Famers, Paul Pierce and Vince Carter. We are here for the next 3 hours to get you ready for the start of free agency at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. Now, because of the pandemic, we have our insiders scattered all around the country, and we can't have the pyrotechnics we're accustomed to, but have no fear. I came up with a plan B to terrorize everyone, even though they're in points far east and west. Whenever news breaks, I'm going to hold up this, and you will hear the siren indicating we have, oh yes, it's still kind of election season, a key player alert. Shout out to our crew out here in Los Angeles for that one. We're expecting a lot of action today when free agency starts, but the biggest story in the league starting at 6 o'clock Eastern is the fact that the reigning two-time MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo, is eligible to sign a supermax with the Bucks. He could sign up to a projected $228 million deal to stay in Milwaukee for the 5 years after this one. Now, for the latest on all things free agency, I now welcome in our ESPN senior insider, the man with the most watched Twitter account in the universe today, Adrian Wojnarowski. Woj, what are your expectations for this free agency? Because it's pretty different from last year.
It's a lot different from last year. Number one, it doesn't have the star power of last season. There's a lot less of an expectation that the big players here are going to do anything but either re-sign and stay where they are. You're going to see more extensions of some rookie extensions on some young stars in the league, and but there will be player movement, and I think you'll continue to see some trades in this window of time too.
For sure. Look, it's been one of the craziest off-season weeks we've seen in a long time because of the condensed schedule. And the defending champions have a key player where there's not a ton of mystery about whether he'll stay with the team or not. But where and when and how is all up for grabs. So Anthony Davis, eligible to sign that extension. What is the latest with the negotiations between him and the defending champion LA Lakers?
Well, there's not going to be a rush. There's not going to be a quick Anthony Davis agreement, I'm told. At least probably not until well into next week, I was told, past Thanksgiving. Davis, wow. Listen, he's returning to the Lakers. It's going to be a question of what the deal looks like. He's got a few different options in terms of the structure, how long he's going to go. He can do like a 2+1, 3-year deal with an option after 2. That lines him up with LeBron James. They could be on the same be on the same trajectory at that point. So that's what he's going to talk to the Lakers about. He and Rich Paul, his agent, into the next week. I know Rich Paul will talk to Rob Pelinka tonight. He's got KCP, who's also a free agent there. But you saw LeBron James do this in Cleveland when he was on those 1-year deals, and you knew he was going back. Some of them extended several weeks, a few weeks. I don't know if ADs will go that long, right. But there's just going to be a window of time here before he decides or firmly commits to whatever contract structure they finally land on.
The other big sort of idea we're going to be talking about today and looking for is how these free agents or moves or trades are going to fit in with teams that they don't know what they're getting this coming year in terms of fans in the stands, revenue coming in. There's question marks about how much room there is available. Not a lot of teams have huge, gallons of cap space the way we've seen in some other years. How is that going to affect guys like Fred VanVleet or Serge Ibaka, who aren't those big, huge names like Kawhi Leonard last year, but who have won rings and could be a key ingredient to add to a championship mix on another team?
I think Fred VanVleet is very likely to return to Toronto. Maybe it hurts him in his negotiations as to what number he can get to with the Raptors on his extension versus if there were a lot of teams with cap space and he had a lot of, maybe some more viable options out there. But I think VanVleet returns to Toronto. But I think two of Toronto's free agents Serge Ibaka, Marcus Saul, very much up in the air where they play. Those are two players who a lot of teams around the league want to talk to here in the next couple days. And I think Toronto would like to keep as much of the group together as they can. And so, those will be some interesting questions. But I think you look around the league and you see players like, Joe Harris. I think Brooklyn will move here in the next couple days to try to get Harris locked up. And some players, who are key components to teams. Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, both extension eligible. Those are very likely extensions, that they'll get done here, I think, sometime in the next few days.
Yeah, well, we know that a lot of these moves set up the moves that create a trade to get a big-name player in a week or two. So we're going to be watching all of them for sure. Woj, I know how busy you are right now. Thank you so much for taking a minute out. We will say goodbye, but please come back if news breaks. We'll look for you through the rest of the show. Thank you so much. All right, back to our guys. I want to bring back in Paul. So we know Giannis will be able to sign that Supermax extension, Paul Pierce, but my question is, should he? Would you, if it was you?
If I'm Giannis, $230 million is going to be pretty hard to turn down. I mean, he's still young. And then you're with a franchise who has shown the commitment to try at least get better. I mean, I know they had a trade that went through. They got Drew Holiday. They didn't get Bogdanovic. But it just shows you that they're trying to get better at all costs. And if I had this on the table, there's no way I wouldn't take this. Look at that, $228.
What about you, Vince Carter?
He's right. He's in the position. I mean, that's a lot of money, man. Like, point blank. But and I know he wants to win. And I think Milwaukee is showing that they're trying to do everything they can to bring in stars and some pieces to strengthen their team. I think Drew Holiday is a great asset and a great piece to him. Two-way player, tough guy. And I know things fell through with Bogi Bogdanovic, but this is a great start in the right direction to lure him back.
Well, Amin Al Hassan popping in with us as well right now. And look, I have never been in the position of having to accept or turn down $230 million. So I can't say for sure what I would do. But considering he could get the exact same amount of money next year, next offseason, considering that we have seen even players, if they get a significant injury like Kevin Durant tearing his Achilles and Brooklyn signing him to that max deal anyway, right out of the gate, knowing that he couldn't play for them for a year. So knowing that that kind of situation, that insurance is out there if you get hurt, why would you sign this deal? Is that security just you take it while you got it?
Yeah, I think you talk about the security. Again, it's one thing to say Durant got the money anyway, but we also know that Durant's game is injury-proof in the sense that his height, his length, his shooting can allow him to kind of overcome an Achilles injury in a way that Giannis could not, because his game is so heavily based on athleticism and explosion. But I'm with you, Rachel. If the money's the same from the Bucks now or next summer, why not wait till next summer and then give yourself real options? And the thing is, when you throw up that graphic of what he could get from other teams versus what he could get with the Bucks, it fails to recognize that he probably wouldn't sign a 4-year deal. He'd probably sign a 2+1, opt out when he hits the 10-year mark, and then sign a new deal then with a higher slice of a bigger pie. And that's the big thing there, is that it's not quite 145 versus 230 or 228. It's a little bit more than that that he could get otherwise. And so you want to see if what the Bucks have done are these moves cosmetic? Are they moves that are going to move the needle, or are they just names that we got in here and we end up not being that much better than what we were before?
Let me tell y'all something.
Well, Paul, what do you think of this
listen
lineup?
to this. No, listen. We're in an era right now. If you asked all the players in the league, would you rather have $230 million or a championship ring? I bet you 99% of them would say $230 million.
Really?
Take the money, secure the bag.
Elite players. Elite, top 10 players.
It don't matter. Every player in the league. Every player in the league. You ask them right now. The money is so great now.
Especially at that number 230.
It's too
You're not
great
talking
right
about
now.
75
Let's just be
million.
honest. The number has gotten too great. You know, when me and Vince played, our max was like 70, 80, which was a great number. But 230, come on, man. Give me 230, and y'all can have that.
But Paul, if the money's waiting for you either way, what's the rush?
Like you said, his game is not injury proof. He breaks a leg, tears an Achilles. His game might not recover because he don't have the skill set that Durant has. Come on, we all know that. Just the honest truth right there. Y'all wanted it, you got it.
Well, look, I'm operating in a world where, again, you talk to me or Amin, whose max salary never hit $70 million, Paul Pierce, just saying. $230 million is an insane number, but I'm also living in a world where I just saw James Harden turn down a 2-year, $103 million extension. So I'm seeing guys, because, you know, James basically has made about $300 million by the time this current contract he's on is going to be over, and saying, okay, I care a little bit more about winning. Anthony Davis had the chance to make more money with the Pelicans and still asked out to go to L.A. because he said, look, I do have a lot of money already in career earnings. I care more about winning. So it's not unprecedented, but I will say that the Achilles injury or something like that, the threat of that is real because we're seeing so many of these to key players. It's not just Kevin Durant. We learned yesterday, guys, about Klay Thompson, right? Go ahead.
I will add to this, to that part. What Paul is what he's saying is at the end, especially if you're a guy who's injury prone and you've had some injury that has put you out of contentions or just opportunities to win. Sometimes the best route is going to get that money. Our sport is guaranteed. So when you have that money locked up, you have it locked up. So, you know, what it means saying and what Paul is saying, they're both saying great things. But it's like if you're a guy that's been injury prone, you don't want to take that chance at that number.
Not that number.
Not that number.
Well, that's certainly true. And by the way,
Paul, like
even if you're not a guy,
maybe 230, nah, not that number. Not on duty.
I mean, I guess we better listen to the millionaires. I was going to say, even if you're not a guy who's injury prone, you have to think about it. Klay Thompson, of course, tearing his Achilles. You have to remember, he was the Warriors' Iron Man, right?
Yeah.
Leading up to that injury, that ACL, and now he's got a series of injuries. We're going to talk more about Klay Thompson right after this break. We're also going to talk about what the Warriors have done to try to make up for that. Kelly Oubre, is he the answer to their questions? We'll discuss right after this. Stick with us. We've also got our distant replay from today from... Welcome back to The Jump. Now joining us, our NBA insider, Brian Windhorst. Brian, I know you are really, really disappointed not to be sitting next to me for that smoke machine today. I just want to warn you that if there is a deal that is announced or at least leaked before the deadline and you're on with us, you are going to hear this. And, you know, I'm sorry about the noise. What can I tell you?
Key player alert.
You'll see our key player alert as well.
Player alert.
It's a little bit better than the year that I electrocuted Brian from the smoke machine. Just a little bit. But, you know, there you go. I want to ask you guys about Anthony Davis because he can sign that long-term extension we've been talking about with the Lakers. All roads, of course, lead to him staying in LA. He does have some choices. And as you heard Woj say in our last block, he's not expected to commit in the immediate days. Brian, can you explain a little bit about what's going on here to our audience, what his options are, and is there any point they should start getting nervous?
Well, there's some speculation out there, Rachel, that one of the reasons why he's going to delay his decision is because the Lakers have some other free agency moves to make, and he just wants to let them know he's watching. Now, I don't think there's any stress out there. He will be a Laker, but one of the guys they have to make a decision on, and it's a tough decision about how much to pay him, is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who is represented by the same agent, Rich Paul. Now, I think Caldwell-Pope is going to have some interest out there in the market. Whether or not he can get enough money out there to actually leave the Lakers is a different story. But this is somewhat reminiscent of when J.R. Smith was a free agent back in 2016 in Cleveland, represented by Rich Paul, and LeBron took his sweet time over that summer before signing. Now, having said that, LeBron did sign before J.R. Smith did. But while I think Anthony Davis has been well aware of his contracts options for months now, maybe it's just a little bit of a check game that he's playing.
Paul, if you were Anthony Davis, would you commit 2 years plus a player option, do the 1-and-1, where you're only committing for another year? We've seen that be a strain on teams, like when Kevin Durant kept doing the 1-and-1s and the 1-and-1s that just brought all these questions about whether he was really going to stay. Or do you want to keep your flexibility if you're Anthony Davis?
I think it's important for the players these days to keep their flexibility. I would line my contract up directly with LeBron's because, as you can see, he can sign for 35% of the cap after that 10 years. And so, you know, LeBron, he could probably retire in 2-3 years. Who knows? You know, but I'll line my situation up with his. But what Anthony Davis got to understand is you're a Laker, you won a championship. Now, if you decide after 2 years you don't want to be a Laker or 3 years you don't want to be a Laker, it's like, to me, where do you go from there? And so I really would start thinking long term. I would think even for a 5 or 6 year deal. I mean, because after you may win another championship as a Laker. There's nowhere else you can go after being a Laker after winning 2 championships and being the face of the franchise long after LeBron has left. So, I mean, his options are open, and that's a good thing to have these type of options for Anthony Davis to make these type of decisions, because he's one of those players whose game is injury-proof also. He's 7 feet, athletic. He can do so many things with the ball. He can shoot, soft touch, handle the ball. So sky's the limit for this kid. Whether he stays healthy or not, he's still going to get a great deal. So maybe 2 is the way to go.
I like what you're saying, Paul, and I agree. He really has some flexibility. I think lining his contract up with LeBron is a great thing to do. You know, win as much as possible. And then down the line, obviously, you could do the 1-and-1s back at home. I know that was talked about. I think Chicago, a couple other teams where he could possibly go back. He could do his 1-and-1s then. But right now, you want to win as much as possible. And he can make a lot of money on a very good team with the chance to win another championship back-to-back possibly. So I think right now, I don't walk away from that opportunity. I mean, I think, you know, at the end of the day, he's going to be a Laker. And that's just, they're just giving all these, you know, just doing, like you said, playing the game a little bit. Yeah, I know I'm signing there. I'll sign later, you know, just for the drama, you know.
What's life without a little bit of drama? And by the way, Paul, I know that you have your number retired in Boston. Right, exactly. I know, Paul, you have your number retired in Boston Garden, but you're clearly always an LA kid if you're saying, what could you possibly want besides playing for the Lakers? I mean, that there's not even a consideration of another team. That's the most LA thing I think I've heard you say in a while. I do want to move on to the
live
Sixers,
here after
though.
Basketball anyway.
Yes, for sure. I need a house here before he even came to play for the Lakers. I want to move on to the Sixers, guys, because they made trades to acquire Danny Green, Seth Curry on draft night. So, Brian, what is Philly's next move after what they have done to address their shooting concerns? Because they at least opened up some space on the floor here.
Yeah, and by trading Al Horford, they also opened up some room on their books. They were facing pretty significant luxury tax penalties, and the Al Horford trade gave them some airspace, and so they now can, dip their toes into free agency. But of course, that's not what you're asking about. What you're asking about is, are they going to trade for James Harden?
I'm asking about James Harden, friend. Yes.
These trades really don't help improve their asset base for Harden. It's not like the Rockets are like, oh, they have Danny Green. Oh, this is something we're interested in. Most people in the league believe that if they're going to get serious about James Harden, it's going to take putting Ben Simmons into the deal. Now, Daryl Morey has not made any indication at all that he is willing to do that, and he has been very clear as he's talked to the media about how valuable it is to have 2 young superstars in their prime. But if James Harden wants to go to Brooklyn, the way to trump any Brooklyn offer is to put in a player that Brooklyn can't match. And so that's what we're going to be paying attention to. It could be weeks, it could be months before something like this would happen.
Vince, would you do a deal if you were the Sixers, and would you do a deal that included Ben Simmons to get James Harden with Joel Embiid?
It's just a tough question. It's what are you looking for? What do you want out of your team? And I think for Houston, first of all, let me say they're doing it right. If you're going to let somebody like this go, who's a stars of stars, you better make sure you're going to get something close. Now, if I'm the Sixers, if you could get James Harden for sure you're going to do it. And it's just who. I think James Harden in an Embiid would be something special. And then you just put shooters around them and just let these guys do what they do.
Yeah, I'm going to agree.
All right, guys.
I'm telling you, I would love to see James Harden on Philadelphia.
Well, we will leave that question just for a minute because it is deemed time for a key player alert. I'm so glad when we get to hear the siren. Check this out from Serge Ibaka on Twitter. Posted a photo with the caption, "On my way to ...
That might be on his way back
to a breakdown.
Toronto to get his.
Come to Boston, baby. We need you in Boston.
He could be. Let's go to Amin Al-Hassan real quick to break down why Serge Ibaka is so valuable.
All right, guys. Once a VC, always a VC is back. The video coordinator and me couldn't stay away. Here's Serge Ibaka. He's going to be another big free agent on the market, especially for contending teams. Right here, you see his ability to set that down screen for Powell and then roll to the basket and finish strong. A lot of this is predicated because the defense has to respect Ibaka's ability to shoot from the outside, so it opens up a lot of things for him. Here we see Darius Bazley. He closes out a little too late, a little overcommit. Ibaka, one dribble, front of the rim, finishes. Again, this is because they're afraid of his jump shooting from the perimeter. And, over time in Toronto, he's been an effective post scorer, obviously off of pick and rolls, finishes. But here's the big thing you get, the defense, right there. His ability to rim protect, his ability to switch and guard other perimeter players. Serge Ibaka is going to be a big get for someone on the free agent market who's trying to make a move for a championship.
So that's an idea of exactly what is on that airplane right now. Brian, can you give us any insight into what Ibaka's options are? Because Woj reported just in the last hour that the Celtics were clearing up some room and making some trades. Dennis Cantor on his way to Portland.
Yeah, so you got to keep an eye on the Celtics with Gordon Hayward, whether or not they would participate in a sign and trade, likely with Indiana, or if they would just re-sign Gordon Hayward. The thing with Serge Ibaka is he will get the most money likely if he stays put in Toronto. But if he wants to move around, if he wants another place maybe to play sort of the back end of his career, and he's willing to take less money, all of a sudden a whole bunch of other teams come into play. Specifically, the Brooklyn Nets, who Kevin Durant was a teammate of his with the Oklahoma City Thunder, of course, and he's been doing some recruiting there. And then the Los Angeles Lakers, he would be a terrific fit. In both of those cases, he'd be playing for a lot less money, but you could see why he'd be interested in listening to those offers.
All right, so Paul, if it was you, where would you land the plane? Would you land the plane in Toronto where you could get more money? Would you land the plane in a place like Boston or LA? What do you think? Or the Nets with Kevin Durant? What do you think?
Say Boston.
No, listen. Me, if I'm him, I wouldn't say Boston. But me, I'm biased to the Boston roots. Of course, you know that. But, Serge is at the back end of his career where he needs to maximize his potential to get the most money, where he has the opportunity to possibly get that and win. And so the only way he gets that is in Toronto. Now, if he's satisfied with what he's made throughout his career, then I'll search for greener pastures in Boston. Doesn't that make sense, guys? Greener pastures, Boston. I mean, come on.
Got it. I think, like I said, signing back with Toronto, I think it all depends on what Fred VanVleet is going to do. We know Gasol has moved on. So I think that'll be the issue there. I like him in Brooklyn as a defender, shot blocker, stretch the floor for shooting. That opens up. Now, what do you do when you who do you double off of if he goes to Brooklyn? And defensively, he starts breaks with his shot blocking, and it's already if the Brooklyn Nets are in half court, one-on-one they're going to score. You get them out in transition, they're tough to guard, and he runs the floor. So a great look in Brooklyn. Oh yeah, and as well as in Boston.
Well, we will keep you guys posted on where that plane lands. Before I let you go, Brian, I do want to ask you real quick, because we were in the middle of a Sixers conversation when we had our key player alert. The only other question I wanted to ask you was about Daryl Morey. We know that there was so much attention on him in China, and the Houston Rockets games were not shown in China this past season. I know in talking to you off air that the Chinese television actually released a statement after Daryl and the Rockets parted ways. But the Sixers have a lot of business in China, too. What has been the reaction to them? And what did they exactly say after Daryl left Houston?
Yeah, so as you know, China and the NBA were in a deep freeze for about a year. And when Daryl left his job as the Rockets, the CCTV put out a statement which translated to "have a good walk," which kind of sounds nice, but is something that is a phrase the Chinese say about people who have passed away. So I think there was probably a big surprise in China, especially since after the Rockets, the Sixers are one of the most high-profile teams in China. They actively tried to court that market. And certainly it had to be a consideration when the Sixers made this decision. But the damage in China is done. The Sixers have to move forward with what's important here on the home front. And they felt Daryl Morey was the best man to do that, even if it hurt their connections in China. And you can already see the impact he's having on this roster, and there will be a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Brian, thanks so much. We'll see you later in the show. Coming up, we're going to talk about what's next for Gordon Hayward joining us now. Welcome, sir. And I don't know if you've heard, because I can't bother you all with a crazy smoke machine this year, it's time for a key player alert. Oh, yes, we're using the siren today.
Another one.
And the key player is not a free agent. It is Rookie of the Year, Ja Morant, because this might be the most important story in the NBA. Yesterday on The Jump, we told you that the Memphis Zoo named a new giraffe Ja-raph after Ja Morant. Get it? Yeah. Today they met each other. Zach, I'm overcome with joy at this.
Animals are awesome. Animal-human bonds are awesome. Zoos are awesome. I love everything about this. I just hope they stay in touch. I hope they form a relationship, that the Ja visits him frequently. I mean, I think that's important. The giraffe is going to get used to these celebrity visits. You can't abandon the giraffe after one visit.
The giraffe.
Right. Okay. It's so good. I'm just so happy that they're friends now. This made my week. Seriously. All right, Gordon Hayward. Let's talk a little bit about him, because, Zach, you have been on top of this story all week. Gordon did, in fact, opt out of his $34 million player option with the Celtics. He's an unrestricted free agent. So, Zach, what is next for Gordon?
You could argue he is now the #1 unrestricted free agent on the market. And this is a very complicated situation with a lot of moving pieces, right? Like, he could still re-sign in Boston. Boston could sign and trade him to any team that has assets that it wants, doesn't even need cap room. Then you have the Knicks opening up a lot of cap room. The Hornets have cap room. There are a ton of balls in the air right now. I will say this. Boston and Indiana have been talking trade for the last couple days, and I think Indiana was very smart to wait out Gordon Hayward's player option deadline, because now that he's opted out, Boston has the risk of losing him for nothing, and I think Indiana, although he just can't walk there into their cap room, gains a little more leverage in those trade talks. So, but there are a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah, just given age.
And that's because he could re-sign in Boston for more money, right?
Mm-hmm.
He can re-sign the biggest deal in Boston, but I suspect the money will be relatively equal no matter which option he chooses.
Yeah, that's a significant amount of money to opt out. You have to wonder if he already has a deal on the table. You know, when you're a player up there in age and you've been injury prone and you turn down $34 million for 1 year, you have to wonder if he has another long-term deal on the table. In most cases, players, you know, they arrange those things, but it's great timing for him because, you know, he does become the #1 free agent. Because Anthony Davis most likely is going to sign with the Lakers. And, you know, he's that player who can really, you know, help a team get to that next level, whether it's championship contention or even to the playoffs. So I think it was a great business move by him.
Or, Paul, he could be lining up to get a lot of money from the Knicks or maybe the Hawks. You know, they have a lot of money there, and you know it's a great opportunity for Gordon to go there, the Knicks, and be a starter again and help take some pressure off an R.J. Barrett and kind of groom him into being a star player and a go-to guy, and not have him having all of the pressure of being the player to save the Knicks. Now you bring somebody with a veteran like a Gordon Hayward to kind of help with that, or he can go to the Hawks. And with the money that they have, and you know they have a lot of young guards in the Kevin Huerter, Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, and they just brought in Snell, so they would have to maybe move a wing player possibly. But those are options as far as him making a lot of money. And like you were saying, as far as why would he turn down that type of money? But if he's looking for contention, then possibly the Pacers or something like that.
It's so interesting. Certainly, Vince, hearing you talk about Atlanta, because you know quite a bit about that team, having just left that roster. And look, with Gordon, his circumstances have changed so much since when he signed with Boston. When he signed with Boston, coming from Utah, the idea was that the team was going to be rising and rising around him with their young stars. Of course, that terrible injury on opening night in Cleveland and the way their young players developed ahead of schedule has changed everything. And first with Kyrie being there, and now with Kemba being there, it's just more hands that want the ball. It wouldn't shock me if he wanted to go somewhere else. In addition to the money, wanted to go somewhere else where he could be more of a focal point of the offense. Okay, guys, I want to switch gears, though, to the West Coast.
You got to think real quick. For Boston, those two guys are great. Those two guys are great. So it's tough to kind of say now, hey, Gordon, look at what we have here. They have two talented young stars of the future who will be obviously contending in the East and making the All-Star game for years and years to come. So it's kind of like the odd man out for Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, and there's a point where you just want to be able to play basketball the way you want to play it, and that is valuable to all of these guys, too. All right, let's switch to the West Coast. Klay Thompson mentioned it at the top of the show. We've been talking about it for the last 24 hours, that right Achilles tendon tear during a workout on Wednesday in Southern California. Thompson's agent, Greg Lawrence, told Woj that Thompson is expected to be fully recovered for the start of the 21-22 season, but gosh, that feels like a long way away. Woj also reports the Warriors are finalizing a trade to acquire Kelly Oubre for a 2021 protected first-round pick, which will become a second-round pick if they finish the regular season in the top 20. Now, Golden State will absorb Oubre and his $14.4 million expiring contract into a trade exception. This is fascinating. They only had about 36 hours to get this done, costing the franchise, and this is the huge number, guys. I want you to listen to this. $66 million extra dollars toward its historic luxury tax bill. So, Vince, I was going to say tax money aside, is trading Oubre enough to help fill the hole of losing Klay, but I don't even know how you put it aside, because basically you're talking about adding a player who is not going to win you. That's not pushing you over the edge to a championship, and you're spending an extra, on top of his salary, an extra $66 million.
Well, that tells me that they're still trying to win now and still stay relevant. They want to stay, you continue to make the playoffs and stay relevant and keep your stars. I mean, obviously you get Klay back the following year, but they feel like they have a good nucleus of guys, and you get a healthy Steph Curry back now. So I still see them making the bottom half of the playoffs, somewhere between 5 and 8. But I like to see them add a free agent like Avery Bradley if he opts out with the Lakers. Somebody like Avery Bradley as well to help with ball handling, and now maybe moving Steph to the 2 every now and then to be the shooter that they're missing from Klay Thompson. Not saying that Oubre is not the shooter, but you want Klay you utilize Steph's lights-out shooting, so why not bring somebody like Avery Bradley who can now go and guard the best player on the other side as well? Perimeter
First of all, huge commitment from the Warriors ownership. For a year that's probably going to be a lost season in terms of championship contention, to pay whatever gazillion dollar figure you just mentioned, that's a real commitment. They didn't have to do it. It's a real commitment. Second of all, shout out to Klay Thompson. He's absolutely a beloved player across the league, one of my favorite players to watch. We are all hoping and praying that you recover. And as far as the Warriors, I think Oubre fits really well. He's a decent 3-and-D player. His shooting ticked up a little bit last year. We'll see if that's real. His defense can get a little better, but I think he fits well. And also, he's only 24. They can re-sign him. He can be part of the future, and they can figure out whether he or Andrew Wiggins is the more valuable player as they go down the line. And there's been a lot of conversation in the last 2 days about whether this is the end of the Warriors. And it might be. It might be the end of the Warriors as a championship contender. But all this stuff about, do they look to trade Steph? Do they look to blow it up? To me, that is way too premature. This is Stephen Curry. This is the kind of guy who could be a lifer, a 3-time champion already on one team. I think you just hit pause for a little bit. I know all stars move around and they all get traded here and there. I just think Stephen Curry is a different kind of situation given the equity he has in Golden State. And let's just hold in place for this year, roll it back next year, see what the team looks like. Can you get one more run out of it?
Yeah, Oubre, I think he's a fine young player, but it makes me think, what type of style do you see the Warriors playing this year? They don't have the luxury of the shooters without Klay Thompson. Obviously, they don't have Kevin Durant. And how much of a load is going to be put on Steph Curry? Is he going to have to play like a James Harden type of role just to help this team get into the playoffs? Who knows what's going to happen with the development of Andrew Wiggins? So they have the talent to be a playoff team. And no, they're not contenders with this move, but they put themselves in a position that they could be one player away, maybe an all-star or superstar back in the lineup to put themselves there. But, Oubre, while he's a fine player, he doesn't put them over the top, especially with the loss of Klay Thompson.
Well, guys, that's why I kind of said something about getting a point guard or like an Avery Bradley or somebody who can handle the ball and now utilize Steph's ability to shoot the ball and, run off screens a little bit, because I agree with you, Paul. Like, who will they be? What is their identity now? So I think, if you're going to have Steph there, use them in different ways. Put him in different parts of the floor outside of just being the point guard.
Well, I'm super impressed with Warriors ownership for making this move, at least making the season better for their fans. And by the way, the government in San Francisco, just at least for now, rejected their plan to test fans coming in the building so they could have increased fans. That's not going to happen. So that revenue, at least right now, is not going to come in for them. And they made this decision anyway. We'll see what or if they do next. All right, guys, stick with us, because coming up after this break, producer Danny told me I get to use the siren again.
Okay.
So,
let's go.
Hang out. We'll be right back.
Alert, alert, alert.
Oh, yes. It's time for another key player alert. Love the sound of that siren. On his IG story, unrestricted free agent Montrezl Harrell posted himself landing at LAX. Amin, should we interpret this as Montrezl coming back to the Clippers?
Who knows? Maybe he's coming back just to negotiate, Rachel. Sometimes you got to just put the scent out in the water, let people know, hey, I could be coming back unless you guys come up with a better offer. So it's a lot of subterfuge going on right now, Rachel. A lot of smoke and mirrors. Ibaka's on a plane. Where is he going? We don't know. Montrezl Harrell's on a plane. He's going to LAX. What does that mean? We don't know. But that's what makes this day so great.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think he's going to return
to LA. Would you sign back in?
Yeah, I think he's going to return to L.A. I mean, I think he really found his niche as a Clipper. I mean, winning Sixth Man of the Year since he's been there. He's improved as a player, and he really fits into a lot of things that they do. So hopefully Montrezl gets the deal that he likes, and he can remain a Clipper and keep them in contention for a few more years.
I agree with Paul 100%. I think he'll end up staying with the Clippers, and because he brings a lot to their bench scoring, and you can implement him in the starting lineup when need be. Game changer on the defensive end, plays with a lot of energy. That's something you can't replace. So the Clippers losing that would hurt them. So I see them working out a deal.
Well, the Clippers definitely do want him to resign because of their overall salary situation. If he leaves, they don't have a ton of other options. On the other hand, he certainly didn't play great in the bubble, and I don't know if that depressed his value with other teams around the league, and that's going to be to LA's advantage. We will have to see. We'll keep you posted on all the news. Up next, we're also going to discuss the latest with Bogdanovic. Welcome back to the Jump's free agency special. I'm Rachel Nichols. We've got Amin with us, Paul and Vince are back, and now joining us, our senior writer, Ramona Shelburne. And Ramona, I want to start with Bogdanovic. He appeared to be headed to the Bucks via sign and trade earlier this week, only to decide to opt for restricted free agency instead. Now, the NBA's free agency period doesn't start till today, of course, and sources confirmed the league is now investigating whether an agreement happened earlier than permitted. Ramona, you know how I feel about tampering, that it happens all the time, and some of these rules are really ridiculous and frankly insulting to some of the players. What is the latest with the situation with the league, with the teams involved?
Well, Bogdanovic is on his way back to the United States, and he's planning on taking meetings. This may take a couple of days for him to decide where he's going to go, but I don't think he's going to Milwaukee. They lost their opportunity to make that original deal construction happen when they waived Ilyasova. And frankly, with this NBA investigation, I don't think he can take a chance on going back to Milwaukee or going to Milwaukee. And frankly, he had never said he was going to Milwaukee because fundamentally he's not allowed to say that yet. Even if he was only talking to Giannis, you can't have a deal in place 48 hours in advance of free agency in a year when every single agent has told me about a memo that they were all sent this year by the league, sternly warning them about tampering, right? Promises of $10 million fines, and everybody's got to keep this straight this year. This is not the year for anybody to be jumping the gun. And I think there was a variety of reasons why this came undone, but starting with, and most importantly, Bogdanovic never said yes because he couldn't say yes 48 hours in advance. And now he's an unrestricted free agent, or he's a restricted free agent. He can sign an offer sheet, but he's on his way back to the U.S. right now, and he's planning on taking meetings. So I think it's going to take a couple days.
Yeah, Rachel, what I was going to say is these are the moments that really tear me apart. Because the media guy in me is like, yes, I want to know about these deals. Break them as soon as we hear about them. Yes, a sign and trade, why not? Even though we know, as Ramona said, fundamentally that's impossible unless you were doing some heavy duty, not just tampering, because Sacramento can give permission, but heavy duty cap circumvention, beating the free agency deadline by 48 hours, right? But the front office guy in me says that's what you get when you're so hot to trot to tell your media sources what's going on. And as a front office guy, I say that's why you keep it close.
Kemba Walker was in Boston the day before he signed with the Celtics last year.
Yes.
That was not like on spec. That was because they had already worked something out.
Rachel, I get it. It happens. But when you put that out there, because we all know how this business works. People in front offices talk to people in the media, talk to people like Ramona, talk to people like Brian, and they'll give them this information because they want to control the message or get ahead of the messaging or whatever it is you want to call it. And agents do this too. So you got to understand, whenever you're engaging in that kind of behavior as a front office, you are risking the validity of this deal. And what the league isn't going to do, it's one thing for Kemba Walker to be in Boston before the free agency period begins. It's another thing to announce a sign and trade 4 days before the trade.
Announce it.
But you know what I mean. When it's leaked, you're not telling them for your health. You're telling them because you want the world to know.
I can't get with this. I can't be here on this. This just always seems so silly to me. Players understand what their value is. They know what their options are. The idea that they won't know unless some other team tells them just doesn't make any sense to me. And Sacramento, obviously being involved in this deal, was involved in the idea of him leaving. So who is being hurt, obviously, by him leaving is theoretically other teams that might want to sign him. But he's not an unrestricted free agent. He's restricted. So Sacramento is going to have a say in this anyway. I don't know, Paul, regardless of the tampering, the not tampering, all of that, he is restricted. Do you think Sacramento should match anyone else who makes him an offer? How valuable do you think he is?
I think he's very valuable for what they're doing. I mean, they're a young and up-and-coming team, possibly could be in the playoffs next year. But on the flip side, this has to be very discouraging for the Milwaukee Bucks, who just saw a team get so much better and take steps back. I mean, Drew Holiday is a really good player, but having this kid on your roster really upgraded them to another level along with Drew. So this is discouraging, but he's a value player in this league, and I expect Sacramento to match any offer that is given to him.
Rachel, I want to point out that this is a different year, and I get your point about tampering, but I have been sent this memo that the league had sent around to all agents and teams this year saying we are cracking down on tampering. They knew it had really gotten out of hand the last couple of years, especially in the way it was being reported, and the guys just flaunting it like Kemba Walker, which you referenced yesterday or earlier. And I think in this situation, Bogdanovic's agents were being very careful not to put him in this situation because restricted free agency is already hard enough. And he deserves a chance to be a restricted free agent, no matter how many players he's talking to right now. He's allowed to talk to players, not allowed for teams to engage in any kind of conversations like that. And now I think what's really important, if you're Milwaukee, and I feel really bad for the Bucks because, you know, for the one team that a small market team trying to keep its superstar, trying to get him to sign this supermax extension. This is so important for them. But if you're going to try to execute a deal of this magnitude, first with Giannis, when they can offer him that, and also the other surrounding moves to convince him to stay, you have got to keep your mouth shut. And that's not talking to the media. That's talking to other teams. There was a Board of Governors call the other day. I think that was talked about on the Board of Governors call. There was a lot of talking. And when you get loud about it, I don't know which team turned them in and asked the league to do an investigation. They have their theories, but pretty much any team that wants Giannis is going to tell the league, hey, crack down on this. And so I feel sorry for Milwaukee, but also you got to keep it tight.
That's all I'm saying.
Because of all this, I received from a reliable source saying that the Hawks are targeting some veteran shooting, and Bogdan, Gallinari, Joe Harris, and Rondo are people that they're very interested in. They feel like they can get two of these guys for sure. And so it's interesting that you're saying that Bogey is possibly coming into the States to talk to teams, and the Hawks, from what my source is telling me, feeling that they feel very confident that they can snag two of those guys. So Bogey could be possibly one of the guys the Hawks pick up, and they kind of get lucky after all of this happening in Milwaukee.
Well, the Hawks have the most money, right? So they're being put out as the team that everybody says has interest in their client. Okay, that they use as leverage. They can only sign one or two of these big names. But I think that they should be in on Bogdanovic. I think there's a lot of other teams that could do sign-in trades. I've heard the Lakers' name has been mentioned as a team that might have interest. It'd be very difficult because they'd have to work out a sign trade. They don't have a lot of salaries that match up. But now this is wide open. And the one place I don't think he's going now is Milwaukee, because of this NBA investigation means you can't take a chance on going to Milwaukee at this point. First, I don't think they can pay you. They're hard capped. But if in 3 weeks that investigation turns up tampering and then your deal is invalidated, now you're really in trouble.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to see all of this. Vince, by the way, thank you for the tip. I almost broke out the siren for you. I think
I started to say it too. That's okay.
I think we can do it, producer Danny, right? Director Kathy, we can do it, right? There we go. It's a key player alert from Vince. There we go. I love it. And by the way, the man just took off an Atlanta Hawks jersey before he put that suit on. So I would listen to him. He knows Bogey really well. Also, I do want to get to the Lakers part of the equation because you just mentioned them. Lakers president of basketball operations, Rob Pelinka, just got his own deal done for Dennis Schroder, and he spoke about that trade and more in his media availability yesterday. Here is what he said about the Schroder deal. Quote, "He has been a player we pursued not just in this trade deadline, but before. We pursued him aggressively. I think it's easy to fall into complacency when you win a title and just say, hey, let's run it back. But at the same time, I think my school of thinking is always, let's find ways we can become even better. Every offseason, let's get better." And Ramona, this is such an important idea because, yes, you are, quote, running it back. But even with your roster, everyone gets a year older. So that idea of just run it back is never exactly right. LeBron James is turning 36 next month. What kind of turnover can we expect on this roster entering next season?
Well, look, the Lakers have the problem of championship, which is you have to now pay the championship premium. Everybody wants their pound, right? They want their bag of cash. I feel bad for the Lakers in some sense that they didn't get that playoff money. They didn't get that gate money of all the fans attending Staples Center. So usually all the luxury tax you have to pay back to your players when they want to get paid for all their contributions, you don't feel so bad about it. Now, don't feel too bad for them. They still make a lot of money on their cable TV deal. But they've got to pony up a lot of money to keep Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Okay, they're going to have to pay. They're going to have to pay Avery Bradley, who opted out of his last year. I'm told he wants to stay in LA. He has other offers, but if they offer him a 2-year deal, he would be inclined to stay. Like, in other words, the Lakers have first dibs on him. But a lot of other teams, Golden State, Milwaukee, Charlotte, have interest in him. Dwight Howard is another guy they need to bring back. JaVale McGee opted into his his contract. That's $4 million. So if they can keep him there, that's good for them, or they can use him in trades. But essentially for the Lakers, Rachel, they have to keep all their guys, pay a lot more money for the same guys they got at a discount last year, and then they have to go and try to find new pieces that make them better. So they did that with Schroder, and I think they have, they'd like to upgrade again at center, either by bringing back Dwight Howard and JaVale, or some of the other centers on the market. Marc Gasol is a name I've heard, Serge Ibaka, obviously. And they need to replace Danny Green. It's a lot of defense and shooting you just lost.
Well, we all know the cost of winning costs money. I mean,
Right.
I remember a key player for us, James Posey. We won the championship, and the next year he wanted more money, and we didn't keep him. And I really think that really cost us in the long run, not paying the extra dollars to keep the team together like that. And that's what you're going to see with the Lakers. Although I do think they did upgrade by getting Schroder. Doesn't have the championship experience of Rajon Rondo, but he is a guy who is a key component to OKC this year, going as far as they went and pushing Houston on the brink of elimination. You know, he's a guy who can score the ball a little bit better. He's another ball handler and decision maker that can take pressure off of Bron. And so that's a key pickup for them in trade for Dennis Schroder. So, and we'll have to see how these other pieces fall in place for the Lakers. But that's a great start right there.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, AD is number one to handle that, which we know that they will. But bringing in Schroder, I think, speed, quickness. You bring in a younger guy who has some playoff experience. Like you said, he does not have Rondo's experience, but at the same time, he's a guy that you can implement into your offense. You can put the ball in his hand, and he can get a bucket. He can make plays. He has a huge impact on the defensive end as well. So, like I said, it's a great start. And bringing in Dwight Howard or finding a center like that, I like a Marc Gasol in there as well. I mean, somebody you can play through and to move the ball and make plays and defensively, or a Serge Ibaka. So I think a great start with Schroder.
Yeah, Rachel, Rob Pelinka's got a tough job. I know he says the enemy of winning is complacency, but it's more than that. It's not just complacency, because they don't even have that luxury. When you look at Dwight Howard, Avery Bradley opted out. KCP opted out, Rondo, and there's a fifth one. Danny Green is gone, and Markieff Morris. So you've got all these guys who were key contributors for a championship campaign, whether they did it early in the playoffs, late in the playoffs, in the regular season. These guys were all key contributors for this Lakers team. They all could be gone, right? You talk about Dwight Howard was here on a non-guaranteed minimum. He did his job. Now it's time for him to go back and cash out again. So the reality is, even if they wanted to be complacent, they can't. But I like some of the deals that Vince and Paul and Ramona are talking about. I love the idea of Ibaka there, or Gasol. Bogdanovic, if they can get him, that's a huge upgrade in terms of someone who's another ball creator, ball handler, and play creator. And that's the other thing about Schroder, going back to that point. What the Lakers were missing or were looking for at some point in the season was that kind of guy. That's why J.R. Smith was a Laker. That's why Deion Waiters was a Laker, right? Ultimately, it turned out they didn't really need it. They had enough to win a championship. But they knew that that was an area of concern that they needed to upgrade in. And Schroder gives them that. Gives them someone who doesn't need LeBron to create his offense for him. And I think that's going to help him.
Look, I mean, you're talking about two-time NBA champion J.R. Smith there when you talk about him. Come on. Look, I love the Schroder pickup. He's feisty. He's been more comfortable with his role this last year, and I'm very interested to see what he's going to do for the Lakers. We'll see what else happens in L.A. Never boring, and never boring in New York either. I love that I can say this sentence. I don't think I've said this sentence in so long. The Knicks did some really smart things this week. Did you hear me? The Knicks did some really smart things.
Well, that a player wants to go in a sign and trade to a specific spot. The NBA free agency, it begins tomorrow, and Gordon Hayward will be available.
It's going to be the 4th of July tomorrow, because it's going to be fireworks.
What a week it has been so far. And we're not even at the official free agency deadline yet. Welcome back to the Jumps Free Agency Special. I'm Rachel Nichols. I am joined here by Ramona Shelburne, Zach Lowe, Brian Windhorst, Paul Pierce, and friends. Let's play one of our favorite games on the Jump, Something, Nothing, or Everything. Oh, yeah, so nice. First up, with pick protections considered, Sam Presti can have as many as 16 first-round picks in the next 6 seasons. Zach, is this something, nothing, or everything?
It's something. It's something. By the way, I don't think the Thunder are done wheeling and dealing trying to get some second-round picks in the next few days here. But if you look at what Sam Presti got for Serge Ibaka and Russell Westbrook and follow those down the line, it's absolutely obscene. But it's not everything because, look, you can win trades when you're in rebuild mode, right? Lots of teams want to win. You can get draft picks. Draft picks are cool. The hard part is building a team. The hard part is turning those draft picks into players that can actually get you where Kevin Durant and James Harden and Russell Westbrook got you. So that's the next challenge. But he is nailing phase one, like, to a ridiculous level.
This is everything, and I'm going to tell you why. Because if you're in a place like Oklahoma City, you're probably not going to get free agents. The only way you're going to get players is through the draft and through trades. So this is what these draft picks are, the chance to draft those players or trade them for players. And Zach was just talking about the Thunder getting second-round picks in the next few days. Watch him get another first-round pick, especially if they can participate in a sign-and-trade for Danilo Gallinari. He's not going to be back in Oklahoma City, but they could send him elsewhere. This is team building 101, but it's almost like team building 101.2 or something because he's doing this to such an extent.
I mean, even down to the level that the year or so that you're going to probably suck, which is next year, they're not even going to have fans. I mean, that's beautiful. This is basically what Sam Hinkie was trying to do in Philadelphia, which is get as many draft picks as you possibly can, give yourself as many chances to hit on those draft picks, whether they be in the teens or at the top of the draft. Well, next year, the Thunder are probably not going to be as good, probably a couple of years here. But at some point, you become a good, nice young destination with good young players that people might want to go to. And then you have all the first-round picks. I feel like Adam Silver is going to be announcing. And with the 10th pick, yes, you guessed it, the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Sam Presti.
I mean, that's going to happen every year for the next few years.
Well, Ramona, I like the point you made about the process. I think it's something that we don't quite hit on enough when we talk about Philadelphia, that Sam Hinkie's original vision included the fact that when you are drafting 18 and 19-year-old kids, you are just not going to know for sure what they are going to turn into in 3 or 4 years. So the idea isn't just get picks near the top of the draft or in the first round. The idea was get as many as you can. So that even if you only bat, in baseball terms, 300 or 400, if you have so many shots being at the plate, so many ups, you are going to get, say, in Philadelphia, end up with a Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, 2 young all-stars locked in on those contracts. And look, Philadelphia, they whiffed on a bunch of those early picks. But again, when you have as many picks as Philly amassed during that process, and as much as Sam Hinkie has amassed here, you have the chance of getting those young players that you really, really want and can hit on. Paul, if you were on that team over the next few years, how would you approach it in terms of proving yourself to the Oklahoma City Brass? Because remember, they're going to have new players coming in with all these draft picks every year, and also to make your name for yourself, maybe to shop yourself to other teams around the league.
Well, I think there's tremendous opportunity there, especially for a kid like Shai Gilgeous. You know, he's a young star. He has this opportunity with a Chris Paul gone. And the guys there, they notice. They understand their situation. There's going to be new players coming in and out until they find the right cornerstone players that's going to be there for years to come. Now is the opportunity for you to establish yourself as one of those cornerstone players or that player that you can say, hey, you know, he really represents what we are as a franchise as far as hard work and what we do in the community. So now is the opportunity because they know that players are going to be coming in and year out, having that opportunity also. This is everything for OKC. You know, until they find those cornerstone guys, they're going to just keep rolling the dice, and they have plenty of opportunities to do that.
So many opportunities. I want to move over to the Knicks. They cleared up $35 million in cap space, and we know they have been hunting for stars in recent years. Brian, so many times they have created cap space that has not led to anything, but it sure felt like this week that these were some smarter moves. They made a good draft pick, and I don't know, I look at that $35 million and Gordon Hayward just opted out for $34 million. Is the Knicks creating this room something, nothing, or everything?
Yeah, I think it's something for sure. I mean, look, the Knicks realize that salary cap space is in high demand right now. There's not going to be much of it, especially after the Hawks make a move or two. And I think if you look at what they've done the last couple days, making a bunch of trades on draft night to move around to get their picks, and then making a move yesterday to take on a player, Ed Davis, where they picked up a couple of more draft picks. It looks like they're trying to be strategic. Now, that doesn't mean that if a star all of a sudden doesn't become available, they're not going to grab them. But I think they're going to try to be strategic because, quite frankly, next year's draft and next year's free agent class are better than this year's. So going swinging big right now may not be the smart move. And by the way, there's a whole bunch of teams competing in the East. It may not be the worst year to not try to fight for the 8th seed. I know that's not what Knicks fans maybe want to hear, but I do think it's the prudent way of going about it. And so far, Leon Rose and his front office looks like they're following that path.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. I think the Ed Davis salary dump to get those seconds was a great move. Remember, the Knicks missed a chance to do that with Andre Iguodala.
Welcome back to the Jump's Free Agency Special. I'm Rachel Nichols, joined by Amin Al-Hassan, Ramona Shelburne, Brian Windhorst, and all the way from Bristol, Mr. Bobby Marks.
Hey.
This week of condensed NBA craziness started out in the desert with the Suns trading for CP3. So, Bobby, for their next trick, what do we expect from the Suns?
Well, Rachel, I think all eyes are on restricted free agent Dario Saric. He finished last year and coming off that bench and had a nice role as a sixth man, and he is a restricted free agent. The Suns are over the cap, and they can bring him back. They can use their $9.3 million mid-level exception, and they also have their biannual exception to kind of fill out their bench here. And I think one name to kind of keep an eye on is Celtic guard Brad Wanamaker. He did not receive a qualifying offer, and I think he could certainly give them some much-needed depth there, but they certainly do need some shooting also. So Saric, and then kind of filling out that bench for that Phoenix team.
Yeah, no, look, the Suns have obviously made a huge leap here with Chris Paul. A lot of people are focusing on how he's going to help Devin Booker. Look, Devin Booker's fine. He's an all-NBA caliber guard who averages 25 points a game. The guy who's really going to really be the recipient of benefit is DeAndre Ayton. You look at every big who's ever played with Chris Paul. He makes them into damn near the field goal percentage leader in the league because he's great at setting up. And with no disrespect to Nerlens Noel or Steven Adams, but DeAndre Ayton is a different caliber big that Chris Paul is going to be playing with. But beyond that, I really want to see them bring Aaron Baines back. I thought he was a really big part of their success early in the season, way back in November and December, before kind of things fell apart for them and before they came back together again in the bubble. I thought Aaron Baines was really solid for him. Bobby, I don't know, what are you hearing about?
Yeah, he's got suitors out there. Right now his number is at that tax mid-level number, which is right at 5'7". I know there's at least a dozen teams that have, I don't want to say offer, but have interest. I think he's probably looking for a little bit more, but at least he knows that's kind of where his, the floor is for him. We'll see if it's Phoenix. They've got bird rights. They can, bring him back and exceed the cap. But yeah, you're right. That's certainly a position of need. Especially backing up DeAndre Ayton, and he had a great stretch of games before he got hurt when Ayton was suspended.
Well, yeah, Aaron Baines is a guy that everybody's sort of wondering about because there's that second tier level of center that a lot of the good contending teams need. Bobby, I don't know if you've heard this, but Boston obviously needs some more depth at center right now, having done the Enes Kanter trade. Baines is a guy that I think you look at in both LA teams. Any team that needs a good center who can provide some toughness is going to look at Aaron Baines, maybe even like a New Orleans Pelicans, somebody physical to stand next to Zion. I think he's got a good market. It's just a question of Phoenix can outpay everybody.
And this is a deep, out of the five positions, this is deep. This is probably one of the deepest, with Baines and Howard and Nerlens Noel. We'll see what happens with Serge Ibaka and Christian Wood, Montrezl, Harrell, players like that. This is probably the deepest position out of this group of free agents.
All right, I want to move on a little bit because we've been discussing how. Oh, yeah, Brian.
And don't forget about Hassan Whiteside, who there may be some interest in Sacramento to bring it back where it all started.
No.
But I've heard, like Ramona has, the New Orleans Pelicans are interested in the center market. In addition to Aaron Baines, they could kick the tires on Marcus Morris, although I expect him to stay with the LA Clippers. When it comes to the Phoenix Suns, they had an option to wait to do this Chris Paul trade and open up salary cap, a little bit more salary cap space after 6 o'clock tonight when the new league year happened. But instead, they did the Chris Paul trade anyway, which has led people to believe that they have some traction on something with Saric. So I would expect Saric, as Bobby mentioned, to be back in Phoenix for next season.
I do want to get to Gordon Hayward because we've been discussing, guys, how he could pass on that guaranteed $34 million next season. He's already declined the option. Of course, he could always sign back with Boston again. But can you clarify, Bobby, his motive for taking a pass on that much cash?
Yeah, he's our Al Horford this year. Remember last year, Rachel, we were talking during the show, and we were saying, where in the world is Al Horford going? And now it's kind of where in the world is Gordon Hayward going? And I think with Hayward, he is looking more at years 2, 3, and possibly 4 on this contract. It looks like he is willing to take less. He's at, as you said, he opted out of $34 million. So if that number comes in at 25, let's say, and he can get some guaranteed money in years 2 and 3, let's say maybe a total of $50 million, or maybe if it's a 4-year contract, a total of $75 million. That's the motivation for Gordon Hayward. And I think the risk was if you opted into this number, who knows what happens next year based on his injury history? What is his role in Boston for this upcoming season? So we'll see. It's either going to be, certainly New York we've talked about. We'll see what happens with a team maybe in Charlotte. That's, certainly has been linked to him, maybe back to Boston. And then, of course, the sign-and-trade route. And, going the sign-and-trade route at a lower number certainly would help a team like Indiana, and which, would become with the hard cap there. So, as I said, willing to take less this year, but to make it up on the back end.
Yeah, Bobby's absolutely right. Some other names where this has happened. Harrison Barnes did the same thing. Remember, he opted out of his deal. Everyone said, what are you doing? And then he goes and signs for a lesser annual average, but overall more guaranteed money. But, Rachel, if I could, I want to tell you the story of a player named Jake Voskuhl. Jake Voskuhl was a journeyman big about a decade and a half ago out of UConn. He played here, he played there. And I remember Jake Voskuhl had a contract that was $2 million. He opted out. And everyone said, Jake, what are you doing? Where are you going to get money like that? You're a minimum guy. And lo and behold, Jake got paid $3 million on his next deal. And do you know who his agent was? It was a man named Mark Bartelstein from Priority Sports. And do you know who represents Gordon Hayward? It's Mark Bartelstein from Priority Sports. So don't be surprised if Priority has a deal lined up somewhere for Gordon Hayward, because you don't typically tell your client to give up on $32 guaranteed million unless you have something greater than 32 on the horizon.
Well, I think what's interesting with Gordon Hayward and Bobby, I think the Indiana option is really interesting for him. He obviously played there in college. He's got some roots there. He'd fit very nicely on that team. Who would be going back? But with Gordon opting out here and trying to get more years, a lot of the suitors I think you would see for him would be the same teams that courted him a few years ago when he was a free agent. But a lot of those teams are holding their money for 2021 in that free agent class, which is when we come back to Giannis. Okay, if those teams think that Giannis is going back to Milwaukee, they don't have to keep their cap space open for 2021. Well, a lot of people in the team were expecting that after the moves the Bucks did, Giannis will eventually re-sign in Milwaukee. But what do we make of it now?
Well, I think let's start with Milwaukee.
So the word went out that Gordon Hayward. The word went out that Gordon Hayward was going to probably opt out of this contract about a month ago. And in that month, let me tell you the teams that I have heard connected to Gordon Hayward: Cleveland, Detroit, Atlanta, New Orleans, Charlotte, New York, Boston, and there's even some more. His representatives, as Amin said, have vetted the market. Now, Indiana makes the most sense. It is home. He would be a good fit there. But Indiana's payroll is in excess of $120 million right now in a pandemic where their ownership has been particularly hard hit because it's based in malls and big properties like that. Their stock of Herb Simon, their owner, has dropped dramatically since the spring. So if it's a deal that adds money to Indiana's payroll, I don't see it. If it's a deal where he takes a pay cut, drops down, and also Indiana offloads likely more money than bringing in, then I think it's something that could happen. Or if Indiana makes another deal somewhere else to offload money that makes a sign and trade more viable. And that's really been a sticking point here. I think there's mutual interest between Indiana and Gordon Hayward. It's just a road to get there with the amount of money Indiana has on its books.
Well, Brian, I also think from Boston's sake, you've got that Jason Tatum extension that's going to be, coming down that would start next year. And how much money do you want to commit long term as far as what you are taking back? And if it's a guy like Miles Turner who's got 3 more years left, I think if I'm Danny Ainge, I would certainly zero in on Victor Oladipo if that's the guy I want, or even a guy like T.J. Warren.
It's been so interesting. Zach Lowe has been on our show a couple times over the past week talking about the complications with a potential Indiana-Boston deal that involves a sign and trade for Gordon Hayward, and that is certainly one of the things we are watching the most closely today as we tick toward the free agency window. It starts in just a few moments. Now, I don't know how Gordon could talk to any of these teams because that would be tampering, and of course there's no tampering apparently in the NBA. I just learned that in the last hour. But he might have maybe. Some other guys might have maybe, and we might have some big deals rolling in, so stay tuned. First, though, we have another free. All right, guys. Welcome back to The Jump. I'm here with Amin Elhassan, Brian Windhorst, Paul Pierce, Vince Carter. I am Rachel Nichols, and we got a little news and notes to catch you up with. Enes Kanter is heading back to the Blazers. I don't know if that's a key player alert.
Why not? Why not, Rachel?
Siren, right? Come on, why not, right? Woj reporting. Woj reporting that Anthony Davis will wait a while before deciding how many years to sign with the Lakers for, and the team that usually plays in Toronto is headed elsewhere for the start of next season. They are going to Tampa. So those are the news and notes, but we are expecting some big news coming up. The free agency window opens officially at the top of the hour. Brian Windhorst, what are you expecting to hear first?
Yeah, there's a few things that we think will come very quickly. Right off the gate, I think you'll see Brandon Ingram, the most improved player, recommit to the New Orleans Pelicans, probably for a 4 or 5 year max contract. I also think you'll see a couple of rookie extensions done relatively quickly. Donovan Mitchell is lined up for a max in Utah, and Jason Tatum lined up for a max in Boston. Those are things that may take a few minutes to negotiate, but I expect it to happen soon.
All right, Vince Carter, you've been working your phones. You put out an Atlanta Hawks rumor just a few minutes ago. Do you expect more action there in the next hour?
I definitely expect some action there. I actually think my guy Bogey, I should actually just text him and get some information. So stay tuned on that. But I definitely expect them to do something and land some guys. So I'm still working.